thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I know that the family appreciates it. Thank you for, showing your support for Josh, for the family, for the friends. As I'm looking around, I'm actually seeing faces of other people that have been to other ghost bike vigils, of people that have lost their loved ones. So I think a lot of folks in this audience can identify with what the family's going through right now. I want to personally thank the city and state officials as well. This is the first time that we have ever been contacted after a bicyclist death by city and state officials, and it is the first time that we've had them actually come to a ghost bike vigil. So I want to thank you for coming as well. They're going to be speaking after I'm done. I did not know about Josh's death until a couple of weeks afterwards. I found out pretty much when everybody else found out, when it was in the news. And it was at a moment when we found out about 3 bicyclist deaths, all within 12 hours. It was a lot to take in, and I didn't really know what to do or what had happened. After, talking with Karen and the friends and, family members, Josh was a 16-year-old kid. He was biking on Long. He was hit by a driver on Waveland. This is a 25-mile-an-hour zone. And if a pedestrian is hit at 25 miles an hour, they have a 90% chance of survival. If that driver had stopped at that stop sign, there is no way that they could have been going 25 miles an hour once they made impact with Josh. So the driver stated they stopped at the stop sign. We know basic physics shows that just was not the case. One thing that we've noticed in Chicago over the last few years, there's been at least 21 deaths involving bicyclists. That number could actually be higher due to poor record keeping. Just recently, an ordinance has been passed forcing the city to keep better track of this and actually do post-crash analysis. So we're looking forward to that potentially having an impact on this crash. The unfortunate truth is that we dug into those 21 deaths, and what we found is that most of the drivers involved with those deaths actually were able to drive themselves home that night. Many of them didn't even get a ticket. Most of them who did get a ticket, even if they, had some extremely egregious driving behaviors while they killed somebody, the fines, like the fees for the tickets, are less than most Chicagoans pay in rent for a month. That's got to stop. Other states actually have fees and fines that apply to killing a vulnerable road user, including pedestrians and bicyclists. That's something that Illinois should be looking at adopting. We can't continue to train drivers that there are no repercussions if you kill a bicyclist. And I think it's important to point out, Josh is a part of what many of us in the biking community refer to as the 606 Fixie Kids. Yeah. Everybody knows what that means. The 606 Fixie Kids, it's an archetype of Chicago. You cannot go to the 606 without seeing them. They will be there. These kids aren't driving, even though many of them are old enough to be driving. Their bicycles are their identities. Their cars are not. And this is a trend that's happening. So kids today just aren't like the kids when a lot of the city officials were younger. They weren't, saving up for their cars. They're saving up for bicycles. And they're choosing to bike instead of drive. In fact, there's a growing trend right now that less than 40% of teens between 16 and 19 are actually getting driver's licenses at all. And a lot of them are choosing to bike. So we need safe spaces for these kids to bike. Long is a bike route. There are no markings on the street. There is no protection on the street. And in the city of Chicago, 1% of the streets have protected bike lanes. What message are we sending to kids, these kids, when they don't have a protected bike route to get them to the services that they need? There is not a bike route to get to school. In fact, the Schurz kids, they had to bike by 2 ghost bikes to get here in the same ward. There's no safe bike routes to get to the bike trails, to the city services, anything. That's got to change. The city of Chicago has to dramatically pick up the infrastructure. Another point that happened, as this biking community was learning of 3 bicyclist deaths, all within 12 hours, all on the same morning, we were surrounded by city employees parking in the very few bike lanes that we had with city vehicles. What message is that sending to other drivers? What message is that sending to these kids? Josh was a Schurz High School sophomore. His bicycle was very much a part of his identity. You never heard about Josh without somebody referencing his pink bicycle. That would explain why the bike has been painted pink. And this is actually the second 606 Fixie Kid that we've done a ghost bike vigil for in less than 2 years. What message are we sending to these kids? You know, as much as I know, all of you, that bike lanes are a city service, and these kids are going to bike whether we have the city service or not. Legally, these kids are required to bike on the street. We need safe spaces for them to do so. And, you know, I want to point out that not only was this the first time that any, city official has reached out when a bicyclist has been killed, they reached out and immediately began explaining their connection, their personal connection to the biking community. So it was nice to not have to be able to, relay why this is such an important issue. And with that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Alderwoman Ruth Cruz.